Every 6 months or so, I like to make a video suggesting one trade for every NBA team, and we're right around that cycle of another 6 months, so let's talk about one trade that every NBA team would benefit from. Real quick, if you end up enjoying this video, please be sure to subscribe. Also drop a like on it to help it do better in the YouTube algorithm. Both actions are much appreciated. I want to apply a couple of important notes before this. Some of these trades I don't even think are necessarily that great, but they're fun in theory, so I threw them out there. A lot of these trades cannot actually be done like right this second. A lot of the trades said failed because it can't happen until December 15th. It's 3 days or 2 days from now. 3 days from now. Who cares? Anyways, let's get on with the trades, and I'm going to go in the order of the Conference East and then the West. The Boston Celtics receive Andre Drummond and Javonte Green, and the Chicago Bulls receive Peyton Pritchard and 2 second-round picks. Andre Drummond, I will attest as someone who didn't expect it whatsoever, is actually a pretty fine backup center, and Javonte Green is a really, really good defensive wing, was really good on the Bulls, and is a big hustle guy, and any team would benefit from having him. And Peyton Pritchard for the Boston Celtics has been playing like 10 minutes a game, so I don't know that they view him as that important in the long term, so I thought a young guard, even though he's not young, plus some second round picks, is a decent return for two, probably like C+ to B- role players. This only further improves the depth of the Boston Celtics. The reason why I figured you trade for Andre Drummond is even though they have Al Horford and Robert Williams, they do not have a third string center, and that's resulting in Al having to play a lot of minutes at center at this old age, so I think giving him a couple of minutes relief would not hurt. The Cleveland Cavaliers have been in need of a wing, and the Clippers really haven't played Robert Covington all that much, so Robert Covington to the Cavs. The Clippers have been missing Isaiah Hartenstein's backup center play, so Nerlens Noel is there for a backup center who's pretty solid, and the Pistons are getting a prospect out of this who frankly a lot of people are ready to give up on, but he is still young, so there's some reason to be interested. Really, I think this is a perfect case scenario for all three of these teams. I don't think that Robert Covington's really a starting wing anymore, but it is some added wing depth to a Cavaliers team that needs it. They really don't need Isaac Okoro because he's shooting, like, I think last I checked, very, very poorly, unless he's actually turned a season around since I last checked, in which case this is embarrassing. For the Brooklyn Nets, there's going to be a lot of Bulls trades in this one, just as a heads up. I have my own agenda to push here. The Nets trade for Derrick Jones Jr. and Javonte Green and send back Kessler Edwards and a second-round pick. Two defensive-minded wings. The Nets always need those. They're always short on them, so that's added defense to the team, and Kessler Edwards is more of an idea right now as far as I am aware. So it's a young-ish player, a second-round pick in exchange for two win-now defensive wings. I think that's a fair trade on both sides. This one's kind of interesting. The Sixers get Kyle Kuzma, and the Wizards essentially get salary filler and a first-round pick. I think the Wizards are trying to move Kyle Kuzma right now. I think it's a mutual thing, and they probably want to get a first-round pick or so out of it. Either way, I do think a bigger wing, as much as it's fun to clown on Kyle Kuzma, he's a bigger wing who's pretty all right. I think that's a player that the Sixers would benefit from having greatly. The Indiana Pacers received Davis Bertans, Josh Green, and a protected first-round pick from the Dallas Mavericks, and they receive Buddy Hield in exchange. I do think that pick plus Josh is a little steep of a price, so it might be too much, but Buddy Hield in Dallas would be perfect. It'd be another guy who can provide some secondary shot creation, but more importantly, obviously just be a floor spacer, one of the best and highest volume three-point shooters in the league, and it would provide the Mavericks some offense that is much needed after Luka, Dinwiddie, and Christian Wood. In the case of the Pacers, Josh Green has looked pretty good for the Mavericks this year, and he's pretty young, so that's a young role player to get in on early, plus a pretty decent first-round pick, because even if the Mavericks do turn their season upwards, I doubt they're going to finish like top 5 in the West, so that pick would be pretty all right. The Atlanta Hawks receive Mason Plumlee and Kelly Oubre Jr., plus a first-round pick that is owned by the Denver Nuggets, and the Hornets will receive John Collins. Kelly Oubre makes more sense in the scheme of what the Hawks seem to want to do do. The more and more the Hawks progress, the more and more it seems like John Collins doesn't really fit their vision of what the team should be. Really, it should be their two guards leading things with a bunch of wings out there. Kelly Oubre is more suited for that than John Collins, obviously, and you're getting that plus a first-round pick. Mason Plumlee is just salary filler in this instance. And the Hornets are getting back someone who can score the ball and specifically would pair quite well with LaMelo Ball. That pick and roll duo would probably be quite nice, and it would give him someone to rely upon offensively regularly. So I do like that fit quite a bit. The New York Knicks receive Buddy Hield. The Pacers receive Evan Fournier, Emmanuel Quickley, and Milwaukee's first-round draft pick, which I don't know why I added a top 10 protection to, because it's not like Milwaukee is not going to finish in the top. But Buddy Hield, the Knicks are a bad shooting team, to say the least, so having Buddy Hield out there would be nice. I do see a vision or an argument for like Quentin Grimes getting more opportunity and like how would that affect their minutes and all that, but I think overall Buddy Hield would be a plus in New York, especially with how bad that offense is, so long as the Knicks are taking the approach of trying to remain competitive. I personally think they should, I mean, I don't know that they can really get much worse. I want them to keep RJ and Brunson. Trading Randall, I don't know. I don't know with the Knicks, I never do, but if they're trying to be competitive, this is a kind of competitive move, and they're trying to get rid of Emmanuel Quickley for some reason, so this accomplishes that. The Toronto Raptors receive Eric Gordon. The Rockets receive Thaddeus Young, Khem Birch, Malachi Flynn, and 2 second-round picks. Really just salary filler plus 2 seconds for Eric Gordon. I think maybe there's a team out there that would give a first for Eric Gordon, but 2 seconds is probably more reliably true. And Eric is just a guy who can score some points off of the bench, and really when I'm looking at the Toronto Raptors, it's a pretty complete and well-rounded roster. So the only thing that I could see that they really didn't have some variety of was a scoring punch off of the bench. So that's what you would hope Eric Gordon to be in this instance. They have some good defenders off of the bench, but no one who's like, yeah, that guy can go get me a bucket, even though Eric Gordon is very slowly not quite being that type of player anymore, but he can still score in droves at times. The Miami Heat receive a whole bunch of salary filler that will be expiring within 2 years, and the Thunder get back Duncan Robinson, and in exchange for taking on that money, Nikola Jovic and a top 10 protected first round pick. Honestly, I don't know how much I like that. I feel like that should be lottery protected at the very least. But Jovic is probably a pretty interesting prospect for the Thunder. Duncan Robinson's salary, obviously they're taking that on in exchange for that player, but also the first round pick, I don't know. I don't know if getting rid of Duncan Robinson's money is worth giving up like the 12th pick, but also I don't think it's worth not taking on a pick that has a huge chance of not conveying, because the Heat have a huge chance of not making the playoffs, so I'm not actually sure about this one. For the Chicago Bulls, they receive DeAndre Ayton. The Suns receive Nikola Vucevic, Alex Caruso, and Javonte Green. This is, of course, in the instance that the Suns want to trade DeAndre Ayton. I have been strongly in the camp that they would be dumb to do that. However, there continues to be reports suggesting that they would be pretty alright with departing ways with him, even after he signed that contract and even after Robert Sarver's gone. I know he has some sort of chemistry issue with the head coach, but like, I just think DeAndre Ayton, it would be dumb to trade him. But if you're gonna be dumb and trade him, at least trade him to my basketball team. Nikola Vucevic for DeAndre has been discussed before. I think that's a huge undersell, so I also threw in Alex Caruso, as well as Javonte Green, who again, as I've mentioned before, is a really quite solid defensive wing, kind of hit his threes and is a terror in transition. He definitely has his offensive woes at times, but he's a huge energy guy and not a bad guy to have on your bench whatsoever. So that's 3 guys who can really directly contribute to your rotation, 2 of which rather significantly. Maybe you throw in a second round pick or 2 in there, but I don't think with Alex, Vooch, and Javonte, you're really going to get a first out of the Bulls, especially because I don't even know if they can trade a first at this point. But by all means, if they want to trade him, which would be stupid, trade him to Chicago. And I actually came up with a second Bulls trade just for the sake of getting Zach LaVine in a Raptors jersey in the thumbnail. Thaddeus Young, Chris Boucher, Boucher, Gary Trent Jr., and a first-round pick. Gary Trent is quite good. I don't know. I almost feel like a first-round pick is maybe just a little bit too short. Chris Boucher is cool too. Thaddeus Young's old as hell, as good as he was last time he was in Chicago. But yeah, Gary Trent is cool, but not the youngest in the world and a first-round pick. It's not the best return in the world, but I think it's a decent one. And I have seen some people on Raptors Twitter suggest trading for Zach LaVine, but also knowing how Raptors Twitter is, I'm sure there's an equal subsection on the other side that would despise the notion of trading for Zach LaVine. So yeah, there's that. Zach LaVine will come up in a trade later. I will just say that yeah, he's a very weird player to gauge his trade value right now. He's been a lot better as of late, which I think definitely helps. But it's a lot of money for a guy who has been injury prone and started off the season really, really poorly. But he has really looked good the last couple of games. Hopefully this is a turning of the tide. The Washington Wizards receive Josh Okogie, Dylan Windler, Isaac Okoro, a first-round pick, and 2 second-round picks. The Suns get Kyle Kuzma, and the Cavaliers get Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder, of course, being the wing that really fits what the Cavaliers are looking for. Kyle Kuzma on the Suns, I think this is an idea that's been suggested not just by me, but a big defensive forward, a kind of defensive forward, but just more an all-around forward is something that this team could benefit quite a bit. They could use that versatility, whether it's off of the bench or in the starting lineup. I would probably keep starting Cam Johnson personally. Then the Wizards for Kyle Kuzma are getting a first, a young prospect, and 2 second-round picks, so I'd say that's a pretty good return. The Hornets receive Thaddeus Young, Khem Birch, DJ Wilson, and Malachi Flynn. I also want there to be a first-round pick in this trade. I have no idea why it's not. I don't know what the pick would be, something maybe lottery protected from the Raptors, because just a bunch of expirings for, not even quite expirings, they're all 2-year deals for Terry Rozier. I don't think that's quite fair, so there should be a pick in there. But another shot creating guard going to Toronto, that same type of thought. This would be a much cheaper alternative to a Zach LaVine trade, because you can keep Gary Trent Jr. in this scenario. But also Zach LaVine is, at least in theory, better than Terry Rozier, so take whichever side you will. I was quite happy with this trade. The Magic receive Joe Ingles, who's salary filler, and then Day'Ron Sharpe and Cam Thomas, who are 2 young players who have some upside, as well as 2 second-round picks. The Nets, in return, get Mo Bamba, and the Milwaukee Bucks get Patty Mills. So the Bucks are just using Joe Ingles' salary and a second-round pick to get Patty Mills, and the Nets are giving up Cam, Day'Ron, and a second-round pick to get Mo Bamba, because Joe Ingles, being that he's injured, I don't know that he means that much to the Milwaukee Bucks, and he's more just salary filler. So getting Patty Mills, who's an absolute sniper on the perimeter, I would say he's probably an upgrade over George Hill, or at least situationally he can be, and it's nice to have both of those options. So to have last year, I believe he shot like 40% on nearly 7 threes a game. That's someone who fits right in next to Giannis. So I think that's a home run, and I think for the Nets, a center who can actually be a shot blocker. He has his own issues defensively, but at the very least there is that, and can kind of space the floor. He's never been a consistent three-point shooter, but he's also not a terrible one. I think if anything, that's the perfect center to pair next to Ben Simmons, because at least he can kind of shoot the ball and will be able to stay on the perimeter and be somewhat respected. I think Mo Bamba in Brooklyn makes a lot of sense. I think Patty Mills makes a ton of sense for the Bucks in this instance, and Nets are getting back a decent haul in exchange for Mo Bamba, who doesn't really fit on that roster at this point with Wendell Carter there, and Paolo Banchero, who's going to play power forward. Another Jay Crowder trade. This time he is returning to the Memphis Grizzlies, and Zaire Williams, David Roddy, and a Oh, I forgot to mention, one of the teams I couldn't come up with a trade for was the Pelicans, because they seemed pretty much perfect all around. However, I did come up with a trade involving them and the Suns for the Suns slot that kind of makes sense. But I do think the Pelicans are in a situation where they're really far from desperate to make a trade by any means. They really have quite a good, well-rounded roster. I was like, do they need defensive wings? I was like, no, they have Herb Jones and Trey Murphy is fine. Obviously, they have Zion in the starting lineup. They got their center situation situation figured out just fine. And even their guard play, like Devontae Graham is an okay backup guard, you know, it's nothing special, but the Pelicans have quite a great roster in front of them. So like, why mess with it that much? But I did come up with something you'll see in a second. The Denver Nuggets receive Andre Drummond. The Bulls receive DeAndre Jordan and a second-round pick. I am freeing the Denver Nuggets from having to watch DeAndre Jordan play basketball. This move might actually not be something that the Denver Nuggets would do. And I do know that Andre's actually been somewhat respectable in Denver after being terrible the last couple of years. But I think Andre would be better. And I certainly know that my friend Asher, who's a Nuggets fan, would appreciate it. He'd probably shit on Andre Drummond too, but whatever. For the Phoenix Suns, they're receiving Garrett Temple, Jackson Hayes, and a second-round pick, and the Pelicans are receiving Jay Crowder. One flaw I thought of immediately with this trade was that there is a high likelihood that the Suns would not be wanting to trade Jay to the top team in the Western Conference right now. Speaking of which, the Pelicans are the top team in the Western Conference right now. I need to talk about that sometime soon. But Jay Crowder would fit in with the Pelicans. He's a 3-and-D wing. He fits in most scenarios. And Jackson Hayes is a backup big that could potentially contribute something, or, you know, whatever. It's not a great return for the Suns, but I also don't expect the Suns to get a great return really at any point. So the Sacramento Kings trade, I honestly don't know about. This would pretty much be entirely if, you know, you don't really believe Davion Mitchell is worth giving more time to become a more complete and consistent NBA guard. He's definitely been fine for the Sacramento Kings, absolutely. And the defense that he brings is definitely much appreciated. But at the same time, I do think that if they're trying to make an actual playoff push, going for a more established and veteran backup guard might be the move. And Davion is 24 already, so it's not like he's a young guy. So that said, if they were looking to lean more in a veteran move, trading for Monte Morris would be perfect. He's a really great backup point guard, and that would definitely suit the team to win now, I think, a little bit more. Davion might be a better player in 3 years, but right now anyways, I definitely think Monte Morris is. But I can definitely see that there would probably be some Kings fans that are like, nah, we want to see what Davion becomes, which is entirely fair. For the Portland Trailblazers, they receive Daniel Gafford. The Wizards receive Drew Eubanks, Jabari Walker, and a second-round pick. That might have to be a better young player than Jabari Walker, because I know the Blazers actually have a couple of young guys who are doing good. Not Shadyon Sharp, obviously. That'd be a massive overpay. That guy's going to be really good. But Eubanks is fine, but I think Daniel Gafford as a more athletic backup option, especially being that Nurkic is a more slow-footed, methodical type of big, having the more athletic, running around the floor big as the backup option, like the yin to that yang would be cool. I don't know that this is a great return for the Wizards, but also they're playing Daniel Gafford 12 minutes a game, so I don't think that they would mind getting a second-round pick out of him. Got another Mo Bamba trade. This time he's going to the Clippers for Robert Covington and 3 second-round picks, because I don't think the Magic much care about Robert Covington. In fact, I could have probably turned this into a 3-team deal where Robert Covington goes somewhere else. But Mo Bamba, I've mentioned before that the Clippers really do need a backup center, and they don't really have one. So Mo Bamba, backup center, there you go. Giving up a player that, again, they're playing Robert Covington like 12 minutes a game because they already have so much wing depth as it is. And the second-round picks are because the Magic, because I think Mo Bamba is just a better player than Robert Covington. Maybe 3 is excessive. Maybe it should be 2, but yeah. The Warriors receive Alex Caruso and a second-round pick. The Bulls receive JaMychal Green, Moses Moody, Patrick Baldwin Jr., and 2 second-round picks. I've actually thrown out the idea of Moody for Caruso on Twitter. Some people think it's not enough for Alex Caruso. Some people think it's too much for Alex Caruso. I really think these are 2 players that people are unsure of where they gauge in the value department. I think Moses Moody definitely has like decent value, but I think Alex Caruso is definitely like such a win now player and such a good win now player that a lot of teams would be quite interested in trading for him. And Moses Moody and Patrick Baldwin plus some second round picks. Green's just there as salary filler. I think that's a pretty decent return, and I'm throwing them back a second round pick just because we are taking a lot, but I could actually, I don't think that's necessary. Whatever. I hate all of my ideas 5 seconds after I have them, so this is just me listing my own trades and then crapping on them. The Utah Jazz receive Danny Green, Zaire Williams, this Jake fellow, sorry I cannot say the last name, and a second round pick, and the Grizzlies receive Mike Conley. This is not really a move that I see as necessarily realistic. But as unrealistic as it may be, I do think it would be quite a fun trade. So I'm submitting it anyways. I have suggested the idea of Mike Conley returning to the Grizzlies, even if, you know, I mean, none of these players are really that significant to the rotation right now, and it's just a second round pick, but it is a lot of salary to take on, and Mike Conley's older, and really how much of a role does he have when Tyus Jones and Ja Morant are there? It really doesn't make sense, but he could probably play quite a bit of two, and I do think it would be really cool just for him to be there to mentor Ja and like be there for the next generation of the Grizzlies that fell in after him, but still be able to contribute to that team's winning going forward. Like, how sick would it be for Mike Conley to win a championship on the Grizzlies eventually, when this core does, because I presume they probably will at some point. I don't know, it's more of a fantasy thing, but it would be cool, I think. Maybe not the smartest decision, but cool. The Dallas Mavericks receive Miles Turner, and the Pacers get Davis Bertans, salary filler, Josh Green, and 2 first-round picks, one of which is lottery protected. I think if you're going to not start Christian Wood, the least you can do is put a better player in front of him. So at least get Miles Turner. Still able to space the floor while also not being the defensive liability that Christian Wood is, and this year he has been a significantly better scorer, in part because of Tyrese Halliburton's playmaking, but of course Luka could replicate that playmaking very well himself. So he's up to 17 points per game right now. I don't know if you were aware of that. Miles Turner is quite good, and I think the Mavericks would benefit quite immensely from having him on the team. So 2 first-round picks and a young player who's pretty alright, and a bad contract, I would say that is a pretty fair return, and the Pacers can use those picks to further build their core around Tyrese Halliburton going forward. Okay, this next trade doesn't make sense. But it kind of does, but it definitely doesn't. Like, it's chaotic and stupid and wrong. But I thought of it, so I'm showing it. Like, this is something I would post as a troll, really. But Russell Westbrook and a first-round pick to the Timberwolves, and D'Angelo Russell to the Lakers, as well as Taurean Prince as some salary filler. And actually, the Lakers' rotation is so terrible that maybe Taurean Prince would actually be a rotation player there. But D'Angelo Russell can shoot the ball at the very least in theory. I actually think he might have a worse three-point percentage than Russ right now. That'd be funny if that was true. But Russell is a better shooter. Well, D'Angelo Russell, that would be confusing. Better shooter in general, a little bit less turnover prone. Theory could be a better player than Russell Westbrook is at this point. But honestly, the Russell Westbrook thing is kind of going well lately. It doesn't make sense, man. But I just, I get to put D'Angelo Russell on the Lakers in the thumbnail now. So it's a win. Jesus Christ. The Thunder receive Terry Rozier, and the Hornets receive an absurd amount of players to fill up the salary cap, as well as a top 8 protected first round pick from the Clippers. First round pick, bunch of expiring or somewhat soon to be expiring contracts. The Hornets would probably have to release a player or two just to accommodate this actual trade. But yeah, this is the case that the Thunder decide they want to go for it, but not, go for it. Terry Rozier is good, but not like you're giving up a kitchen sink for him. 1 first round pick that's got a protection on it is not bad whatsoever. And that would be another perimeter scoring option that can play alongside Shai Gilgeous. The Los Angeles Lakers receive Zach LaVine, Kobe White, and the Bulls receive Russell Westbrook, Lonnie Walker, and 3 first round picks. It might have to be 2. They might only be eligible to trade 2. I'm not actually entirely sure about that. But if it's only 2, it's only 2. I don't really care. This is the best case scenario for the Lakers if Zach LaVine's trade value was really that low. Personally, if I, as a Bulls fan, I would be kind of upset with this trade, but I could potentially see something like this ending up going down. I am specifically asking for Lonnie Walker in return, though, because he is been pretty good, and as though on the Bulls front office, they could probably flip him for some sort of draft asset, so I'd like to have that, please. Again, I don't really think the Lakers are going to get Zach LaVine, but that's what the trade might look like if they possibly could. The San Antonio Spurs receive Thaddeus Young, Josh Jackson, and Malachi Flynn, as well as a second-round pick. The Raptors receive Doug McDermott. That's another scoring option off of the bench, although Doug's not quite a scorer. He's definitely such a good shooter that he's a plus offensive player, no doubt. and the Raptors could use a little bit more shooting. So similar principle to the idea of trading for Eric Gordon. And last but not least, the Houston Rockets received Dwayne Dedmon, Haywood Highsmith, Omer Yurtseven in the second round pick, and the Heat received Derek Favors. Apparently, Dwayne Dedmon has not been so good for the Heat this year. There's many problems with the Miami Heat, but I figured, you know, of all the big things that I could change, maybe I'll change their backup center, because that's the kind of thoughts that my brain has, I guess. But yeah, there it is. There's all my trades for every team except for the Bucks and I think the Pelicans, whatever. Anyways, shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye.